Something has happened on SCPWiki.com, home to all the internet's favorite short stories that have been read by as many as 7 people. You probably haven't heard about it unless you're a regular reader of the website. It hasn't really hit the mainstream yet, but I'm sure it's going to very soon. It was very recent, after all, so recent in fact that any videos made about the subject are very timely and topical. Yesterday, the SCP Wiki hosted a writing contest called DumbCon, in which participants were given random silly prompts that they were tasked with writing about. The winner of this contest was PlaguePJP, writer of SCP-8000 and every obituary in Cedar Rapids, with SCP-9597 under the prompt Insect Shower. Now, it's important to emphasize that this was largely an unserious contest. It was supposed to be like a lighthearted, jokey type of thing. But what Plague delivered is by far the most poignant, deeply metaphorical, thematically rich story that the SCP Wiki has maybe ever seen. I'm Radiger, creator of the SCP Wiki and author of every other article except for this one. And I'm here to tell you about SCP-9597, the most important SCP article ever written. Now I'm going to pause here so you can go complete the required reading, which is this article. Don't worry, it's very short. Did you read it? Very good. Now that you are up to speed, let's get into our analysis. And boy, is there a lot of analysis for this one, because there is so much more in this article than initially meets the eye. You may think that this SCP is purely about an insect shower, a shower of insects, if you will. But I am a very experienced SCP reader who knows how to read between the lines. This SCP is about insect shower, yes, but insect shower is only an analogy. An analogy for the 1874 American Midwest locust swarm disaster. Let's get into it. Right from the start, Plague begins hinting at the true message of this article. The containment procedures begin with a note that full containment has not yet been achieved, which immediately places us in a headspace of uncertainty, a state of mind which the white settlers of the landmass known as the United States of America would be very familiar with. In just the second sentence, we get this phrase, the nature of the anomaly. This implies that this anomaly isn't actually anomalous at all, but a natural phenomenon. And who might interpret unfamiliar and frightening natural phenomenon as violations of the laws of science and the natural order? That's right. Pilgrims. This, plus the first mention of the insect shower, makes it clear that Plague's story is a thinly veiled metaphor for the white colonialists' lack of preparedness for the fauna of this new land. Not only that, but going back to this first line implies that in this story, we are put in the position of the settlers. This article, although it doesn't initially seem like it, is actually set in 1874. Within the list of termination factors for SCP-9597, we see this: going off-grid and adapting a nomadic lifestyle. This is where we believe the 1874 locust swarm to have taken place according to historical documents. This is a rough map of where the indigenous nations live. This is the area home to the nomadic tribes who followed the bison herds around to eat their delicious meat. These nations included the Arapaho, Cheyenne, Blackfoot, Crow, Lakota, and many, many others. And these people were, you guessed it, nomads. They also lived off-grid, which means they lived a totally analog lifestyle. And it also means they would have been somewhat insulated from insect shower / the locust swarm. We don't actually have any first-hand accounts of this event from the perspective of anybody in the local tribes. This could be because nomadic peoples who didn't rely on agriculture for food and also lived here for 100,000 years may not have been affected or even cared that much. It could also be because the colonizers did their very best to wipe these people's documents, opinions, and histories off the face of the earth so that they could have insect shower all to themselves. Let's continue. In the first addendum, we get the name of our person of interest, William Vion, age 72. William was the second most popular name in the 1880s. 1880 minus 7 is 1873, the year before the devastating to white people locust swarm. This might seem like a coincidence, but I can assure you, Plague never does these things on accident. I know this for certain, as I have had lunch with them about a dozen times. And before you ask, yes, their head really is just a big circle that looks like their Wikidot profile picture. There are even more examples of this thoughtful, subtle detail that Plague added to the piece. Within the text log, you can see this phrase. This alludes to how locust swarms are part of nature and therefore normal, even if they don't seem that way to the settlers. This phrase here is a reference to the fact that William is 72, and this phrase is an allusion to the fact that locusts fly. Now let's examine this area with all these graphics. Plague expertly uses the familiar oppressive atmosphere of intrusive advertisements and spam online to mimic the oppressive atmosphere of being inside a locust swarm. This really helps helps to put the audience inside the mentality of the colonizing people and their families. And the keen observer may have noticed another thing about these images, which is that they are a reference to the Seven Mountain Mandate, the dominionist Christian ideology held by modern evangelicals that believe Christians should take control of the 7 pillars of society: family, religion, education, media, the arts, business, and government. The graphics correspond as follows. First is education, to mimic several articles a student might find while conducting a research project. Second is the arts, presented as a YouTube advertisement on what we all know to be the most artistically important platform in the world. Third is religion, as shown by the detail about Millipede's belief, which we can assume is Christianity. Fourth is government, displayed similarly to a polling email. Following that is business, represented by an order confirmation for a shipped purchase. Last is family, shown through a marker illustration such as what might be drawn by a small child. You may notice that this is only 6 of the mandates. This is also on purpose, as the 7th pillar is media, and they didn't have TVs back then. Plague likely chose this format to draw further attention to the victims of the locust swarm, the white colonists who were most likely Christian themselves. But wait, that's kind of weird, isn't it? Why does it seem like it's the insects who are referencing the 7 Mountain Mandate, and not their victims, the colonists, represented by POI 5700? More on that later. Next, we have this section of text from the anomaly to the POI. It's noted in the text here that these communications are much more personalized, which probably represents that having your home filled with millions of locusts would be a very personal issue. I want to zero in on this sentence here. I was born with holes. It's interesting because it should say I was born from holes, because locusts are a ground-dwelling burrower species that lay their eggs in the dirt. The audience is beginning to question the perspective at this point. Down here, we get another hint about that. Take a look at these locations. They're all on the East Coast, and that's weird because the locusts came from the Midwest, so you'd think that a list of possible locations of the insect shower would be locations along the Rocky Mountains, where the bugs actually live. So in a moment of rhetorical brilliance, Plague switches the analogy entirely. The insect shower is not the locust swarm. It's the ripple effects of settler colonialism. This revelation contextualizes the entire article, from the religious imagery of the pictures to the focus on the continental United States. But still, even after an entire article comparing European settlers to a destructive cloud of ravenous locusts and also to insect shower, Plague still manages to find some semblance of empathy for the colonists in this sentence. Plumbing at each location was inspected, and no anomalous activity was observed. This is a subtle but definite way of implying that, just like a massive killer locust swarm, white people are still a natural life form on this planet. They are not anomalous. And down at the end of the paragraph, we get another confirmation. All specimens were determined to be non-anomalous. January 20th is the date that Barack Obama was sworn in. I find the repetition to be very interesting. The increasing desperation to figure out where to go mirrors the real-life tragedy of the forced relocation of millions of people at the hands of the locusts. I mean the white people. And further down, this smiley face represents the vague, incomplete, and dishonest communication between the settlers and the normal people. The article ends with an abrupt, dramatic shift in tone. Colorful, silly images give way to this, a high-contrast, colorless, startling image of a mass of insects pouring out of a doorway. This is a fitting end to the story because it brings us to a sobering perspective of the reality of the situation, the genuine devastation brought to North America by the European colonists, and the accompanying total lack of remorse. PlaguePJP's SCP-9597 is a brilliantly researched, thoroughly written, rhetorically impressive examination of historical events through a relatable modern lens. Plague expertly combines text and images for a fully immersive effect and manages multiple analogies with deft expertise. This is just par for the course from Plague, the community's foremost expert in mid-late 19th century historical drama. We have come to expect such sweeping poignancy from the winner of DumbCon, and I'm sure that in the coming years we will see many more magnum opus from this literary genius. Join me next time for my in-depth critique and analysis of SCP-6599, Hog Slice, PlaguePJP and J. Dune's piece about Russian Tsar Alexander II's 1866 serf emancipation,